What is up, IDP Army? It's your man Jordan Rains, and we are back again with another show for you, the IDP Army podcast. Uh, you guys really enjoyed the sleeper show that I put up earlier this week or last week. I believe it was earlier this week. So I got more sleepers for you. So I'm going to do another sleeper episode. And if this one gets a good response, I have even more. So let's get right to it.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
All right, boys and girls, guys and gals, thank you for joining us today. We're going to do some IDP fantasy football sleepers for you for 2021. If you haven't already checked out the first video, which I dropped earlier this week, like I said, go check that one out on the channel. While you are here, please do us a huge favor. Give this show a thumbs up. That would be really awesome for the YouTube algorithm. And then make sure you give us a subscribe because we want to hit 1,000 by the time the NFL season kicks off here in 2021, which we think is very doable. We're getting very close. We appreciate the surge and the love and the growth of IDP fantasy football and all that. So do those things. Make sure that you follow us on social media. Check out the website. You guys know all that good stuff. So I'm just going to get right into it today with our sleepers. And the very first player on that list today is going to be Jadeveon Clowney. This year he's going from the Titans. Well, let's go ahead and take it back even further. Drafted, I believe it was number 1 overall to Houston several years ago now. That was all the way back in 2014. Played there for several years. Went to Seattle. Played some there, didn't really produce a lot of sacks there, and then went to Tennessee last year, didn't really produce a lot of sacks there. That's kind of the story of Jadeveon Clowney's career, is not producing a lot of sacks. So you say, why is he a sleeper? I think he's a sleeper this year because a lot of people are kind of jaded on him, myself included, over the past couple of years. The kind of production that he's brought, we expected more from him, and we just didn't get it. Over the last 3 seasons, he only has 12 sacks. Granted, he has missed time, but that's not what you want from a guy who went number 1 overall as a pass rusher. He's never eclipsed 10 sacks in his career. Now, I say all that to say that this year it's a whole new situation. He is with the Cleveland Browns. He plays opposite of Myles Garrett now. Olivia Vernon was very successful last year across from Myles Garrett. And I think that we know Jadeveon Clowney is very talented. If you go look in the Ultimate IDP Index, which if you guys are not in that, make sure you check that out. Go to the website, go to the Patreon / the IDP Army and get in the Black Ops tier before the season starts. You are going to want to get in on this. But in the index, you can see that over the last 4 years, Jadeveon Clowney, even though the impact, the sacks have not been there. Going back to 2017, 29 impact plays. That's a very, very high number. 2018, 22, and he missed a little time in 2018. 2019, 19, but again, missing time. And then 2020, missing time, still had 9 impact plays. The impact plays are intact. Okay, so that's super important to me. We've seen Jadeveon Clowney have a mid-50s tackle season. He had a 59 tackle season, age 24 in 2017. So we know he can push up to that area that we like for a top-tier defensive lineman. And I think, and I really do believe that this year he will break double-digit sacks. So I think he's going to push past 10 sacks this year. And for that reason, for me, he's a sleeper. His ranking right now his ranking is just too low. If you go to Fantasy Pros or anywhere you look, he's not going to be regarded as a player that's going to be a DL1. Honestly, I just said this on a show yesterday. I think that there's a world where he could finish with more points than Myles Garrett this season. We've seen tandems of defensive line players be extremely successful. Going just last year, Chase Young actually did not score as many fantasy points as Montez Sweat, played 100 more snaps. The more talented, the better pedigree, yada, yada, yada. But when it came right down to brass tacks, production for fantasy, the guy across from him actually did better. So we could see that from Jadeveon Clowney this year, and that's why he is coming in for a sleeper for me. So let's go ahead and get on to our next player here. This is going to be another defensive line player, and some people might say, is this really a sleeper? But I would argue that he's maybe hiding in plain sight, and that is Bradley Chubb for the Denver Broncos. You go back to last season for Bradley Chubb, coming off of the ACL tear the year before, quietly had 7.5 sacks. That's not incredible, but that's a solid number for a guy who played 14 games. And again, I need to reiterate, this is coming off of an ACL tear. To go along with that, 42 total tackles, not a super elite number, but again in 14 games. So this is very positive overall information to be having about Bradley Chubb. And he didn't play as many snaps as he even played as a rookie. As a rookie, he played 844. Last year, 741. So I think his snaps are going to increase. We got the second year coming back off the injury. And just to the previous conversation we just had, we have Von Miller now coming back to this defensive line as the other outside linebacker / edge rusher across from Bradley Chubb. Bradley Chubb himself, as well as Jadeveon Clowney, extremely high draft pedigree. Excuse me. So we know that the expectation is there based on what people have seen in college, and the production has been there. Bradley Chubb was quietly a little better last season than I think a lot of people realize, and you can draft him at an extremely reasonable cost, especially if you play on Sleeper, which is our preferred platform. You can play him as a defensive line and a linebacker. You can get him well past, the 15th, 16th, 20th, even defensive line player taken. I'm in an MFL IDP industry experts draft right now, and I got Bradley Chubb in like the 20 plus rounds. And in that league, he is DE eligible. This is MFL, so they had to do some tinkering, but he is, and he went into the 20s. I think it was 22, 23. So sometimes sleepers are hiding in plain sight. So I'm in on Bradley Chubb this year as a little bit of a sleeper pick for you at defensive line. So our next guy is going to be another player who is not quite as young, or a little bit younger than Bradley Chubb. I'll see if I can get my graphics to work here for me. That is going to be Jordan Brooks of the Seattle Seahawks. Now, some of you may remember Jordan Brooks. He was kind of a surprise first-round pick for them last year. But the reality is they were kind of gearing up for the current situation they're in now, which is Bobby Wagner is 30 years old now, and KJ Wright, the other guy who has been their solid linebacker basically since the beginning of the Legion of Boom, and all going back to when the Seattle Seahawks as we know them today has been. He's gone now, so they seem to be, and they're saying and they're acting, and everything points to the fact that Jordan Brooks is going to be a starting linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks. If you just go back to last season, it wasn't overly prolific. I'm not going to argue that he was blowing people away, but 57 combined tackles isn't bad. Only 4 impact plays, 2 tackles for loss, 2 passes defended. Again, those aren't extremely crazy numbers, but he only played 367 snaps. And then if you dig a little deeper, you can go look at his week 13 game against the New York Giants, where on 43 snaps, he had 11 tackles. So he's proven himself to be an efficient tackler. On minimal snaps, he's made a few impact plays, and we know that the volume is coming because of the fact that KJ Wright is no longer a part of this team, and they have said essentially that you are the heir apparent. They going back 2 years, 3 years, they drafted a few other linebackers kind of late, Cody Barton and Ben Burr-Kirven, but those guys just didn't pan out. So Jordan Brooks is going to be your guy. He's a little bit of a sleeper for me this year, just because the name recognition is not there. And the numbers last season, even though they're good, because he didn't have a lot of snaps, they're not high. So they're not inflated. So a lot of people might not be as sold on him as they potentially should be, myself included, as up until recently. But, the more I look at it, and I'm glancing down at some of my taxi squads and I'm seeing him there, and I'm remembering, oh yeah, like that's going to be a thing. So Jordan Brooks, another sleeper for you all this year in 2021 IDP Fantasy Football. Let's continue on down this list. Who we got next here? I believe we got another linebacker here for you guys. Yeah, we do. We have Devondre Campbell. Okay, I love me some Devondre Campbell. Let's just take you back. He's another guy with a little bit of a career arc to talk about here. So let's take you back 2019 with the Atlanta Falcons. He kind of played with his hair on fire, had 129 tackles. That's really, really good. 5 pass deflections, 2 sacks. Basically, he showed himself to be a good all-around linebacker, and he earned himself a contract with the Arizona Cardinals. Now, Arizona Cardinals they paid him a decent chunk of money, but the deal was kind of short, and for good cause, because they spent their next 2 first-round picks on linebackers. So he has now departed While in Arizona, though, still had 99 tackles last year in 16 games, was down a little bit. Impact plays were still decent with 7 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 3 pass deflections, a forced fumble. But what we love to see for Devondre Campbell now is that he is with the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers need a solid starting middle linebacker they can trust and rely on. And we have seen that player be extremely productive in tackles before, which is your baseline for any linebacker. Devondre Campbell gets traded up there. He's their de facto starting linebacker. Another thing we like about the Green Bay Packers linebacking situation is they primarily play one linebacker on the field for most snaps. Some teams do two, some teams play more safeties. Where he's going now, he will de facto, it appears to never basically come off the field. Other linebackers may come in and out around him, but Devondre Campbell being the most experienced guy and the player that they brought there because they have some younger talent that they weren't feeling confident in. Devondre Campbell is a big sleeper for me. You go back 2 years and you saw what Blake Martinez was able to do there over the beginning of his career. I'm not saying Devondre Campbell is going to do that for you this year, but he is a sleeper for a guy that could potentially never be pulled out of your lineup as a linebacker 2, linebacker 3 flex. And right now, you don't have to, the cost to acquire him in a league, to draft him or to trade for him is extremely low because he's not a prominently known player, just in a general sense. So if you are a Packers fan and you play IDP, go get him because I think he's going to have a really good season for you guys. So let's move on down. I think our next player is where we're going to get to our first defensive back, potentially. Let's see who we got. Make sure you like this video, go subscribe to the channel, do all that good stuff. Oh, this is a fun one. All right, Damian Wilson. So this is a linebacker. As a Chiefs fan, Chiefs are actually on the TV right now. We know who Damian Wilson is. He played with Kansas City just a little bit over the last 2 seasons. Didn't do a whole lot, but he did enough to garner a little bit of attention. Now, basically it was enough attention for Urban Meyer to tell Joe Schobert, who's my dude, to get the hell out of town. So it appears as though Damian Wilson and Miles Jack are going to be the starting linebackers for the Jacksonville Jaguars as of right now. If that's the case, we have seen the last 3 years, going back with Telvin Smith and Miles Jack, even the guys who came into play for them when they were injured, we've seen extremely highly productive linebackers from Jacksonville, partially because they play a ton of snaps. People are just running down the ball on them, and they're just getting scored on left and right, but also just because that's just kind of the nature. They are one of these teams that plays more 2 linebacker sets, so you're going to have 2 linebackers that are going to be a little more fantasy relevant there. If Damian Wilson, who appears to have won this job, is that guy, it wouldn't shock me to see a career year in tackles. Previous career high was 81. That was with 16 starts with the Chiefs. Not a huge impact player. Just to give you an idea of what I mean by that, only 4 pass deflections in his career, has played in 93 games. So that's not like what I don't love that. But again, this is one of those situations where you're looking for a sleeper. You're looking for a guy to put on the end of your bench, the end of your team, who could potentially just slot in, get you your 8, 9 tackles, and maybe an occasional impact play, and could be a weekly starter for you in a flex. Damian Wilson has that kind of trajectory right now. Again, I'm not saying he doesn't have a major upside, but he could be fantasy relevant. He's a player that, up until this point in the year, I haven't really talked about, because I didn't really think that was going to be the case. So he's definitely a sleeper. Even for this video, he's probably the sleepiest sleeper of the group. So let's head to the next fella. I think you guys are really going to like this guy. I love this guy. Former Jacksonville Jaguar, now with the Brownies. You have Ronnie Harrison at safety. So the Browns brought in John Johnson this offseason as their prime, like one of their big signings. Everything the Browns do now is amazing. So they did that. But last year they brought in Ronnie Harrison, and he was honestly dynamite for them. The problem was he got hurt a couple of times. And by dynamite, what do I mean? If you go look at what Ronnie Harrison did in 2019, he had 16 impact plays. It's not absolute dynamo, but last year he had 11. And he only started 7 games, okay? And he had a touchdown, he had an interception, fumble recovery, 7 pass deflections. 7 pass deflections in just 7, or in just, you have 9 games? 7 games, so 1 a game right there. No tackles for loss, don't love that, but 38 combined tackles, not terrible. I think that, Grant Delpit was drafted there last year, tore his ACL, and we know John Johnson can play strong safety. and free safety. I'm not necessarily projecting this, but I can see a world where Ronnie Harrison is the primary starting strong safety for this team, and John Johnson is a little bit more moving around a little bit more because of he's capable of certain things. Maybe that means he's playing deeper than we initially thought. Either way, Ronnie Harrison has really good pedigree. Played at Alabama. Alabama safeties are really good in the NFL, pretty much across the board. Even the ones that are just okay are pretty good. And they need safety help here with a solid guy. Last year they had like Anthony Zendejo running around out there, and they had like Skeldrick Redwine. I mean, it was a disaster last year. They did have Ronnie Harrison in on some games, but again, he hurt his back and I think something else early in the season because he was making all these big dynamic plays. So if he can come in this year fully healthy, I think that he is going to kind of weasel his way into a starting role. And on a disruptive Browns defense, now with Myles Garrett on one side and with Jadeveon Clowney on the other, they also addressed their linebacking situation with a young stud, J.O.K., Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, in the middle. And they brought in a reliable veteran. And they've been attacking the corner position the last 3-4 drafts. There's a good chance that this Browns defense has a really good turnover rate or turnover differential, and they're just a really disruptive team all around. And I think a big part of that is going to come from the safety situation. And I think Ronnie Harrison right now is a little undervalued in the IDP world writ large. So I wanted to make sure to get his name out there. Maybe you don't consider him a sleeper because you're a diehard IDP fan and you're a diehard Browns fan and you had your eye on him, but somebody out there probably didn't know that Ronnie Harrison could maybe potentially win them their leagues this year. So go out there, check your waiver wires if you are in Dynasty, if he's floating around, because his end of season numbers didn't look great, because on a per game, per snap basis, Ronnie Harrison was absolute dynamite in 2020. I believe I have one more sleeper for y'all. This one's going out to the Bills Mafia. Let's see if I can get him to pull up here. That is my man, cornerback Taron Johnson. Now, as a Steelers fan, I have, some bad memories of Taron Johnson. It's not his fault. I mean, it was a good thing that he did. He picked off Big Ben, took it back for a pick six. Big dog stuff, all right? He did the same thing, 101 return yards in the postseason against Lamar Jackson. And he's the things I like about Taron Johnson right now, besides from the fact that he's productive, he's an extremely productive corner. He's in a contract year. Love that. High-powered offense, so they're going to get thrown on constantly. And his tackles are insane. I mean, he had 94 combined tackles last year, 5 for a loss. Crazy. 7 pass deflections, a sack, an interception, and he only had 11 starts. In 11 starts, a corner had 94 tackles. That's crazy. I just drafted him in a league that I'm in. I got him like the 27th round. I probably honestly took him a little early, but I don't hear anybody talking about Taron Johnson. I just don't hear it. I don't see it anywhere. And I think we should be. I think more people should be. I think he's going to have a great season. He could eclipse 100 tackles this year as a corner, straight up and down. And he just doesn't get any love, any attention in the fantasy football world that I can see. So shout out Bills Mafia if you all are out there. Shout out to the Cover One crew. You guys will see some of our ads running on their channel here in the next couple of weeks and on their podcast. Love those guys over there. And we had to throw some Bills Mafia folks in here. It was Taron Johnson or Ladarius Sneed, okay? And I want everybody to know I'm a little biased, and I've said that before, but I did the right thing. I'll do it. Ladarius Sneed will be in the next sleeper video, but I gave Taron Johnson his shine in this show. So that is going to do it for you all today. I believe that those are my 7 sleepers for you going into this year. Like I said, go check out the other video from earlier this week. There's 7 other sleepers in there. There's a really good group of guys there. And I'm going to try to get one more of these shows done before the season kicks off for you, okay? Like I said, check out the Ultimate IDP Index. Join the Patreon and the Discord if you guys want to talk to myself and some of the other guys in the IDP Army and other guys in IDP leagues. It's a really good place to just talk about drafts, trade strategies, how we're, roster construction, sleepers. Some of these guys are in the index. Some of them aren't, okay? So the index is still being built. Some of these guys are going to be added this weekend. But I wanted to get this information out there for you all. If you're in a draft, if you're doing some, last-second preps or, like, getting ready for your season or whatever. This is a time that we're all active. These are some names you need to watch out for this season that are going to help you win your IDP leagues, okay? So do me a big favor. Like I said, I'm going to say it one more time. Please subscribe to this channel. Share it with a friend. Share it with your league mates. and go kick some ass and win your IDP leagues this season.
Let the rain hit the sand. Build a house on a rock, got a plan. Gotta get stocks, keep them bands. Hear the clock tick, blades on the fan. Used to be mundane on a Monday. Now you have fun day on a Sunday. Cause you switching it up and you living it up. You ain't getting enough. Now you're picking it up.